All right. Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 105 of BIM After Dark Live. Thank you for joining me on this special Monday night edition of the show. For those of you who were looking forward to Thursday night last week, I apologize. I'm still getting my voice back. I've got myself some nice warm tea in the BIM After Dark community mug. I got some tissues, I got some cough drops, and you're going to bear with me. Hopefully we get through this thing together. Tonight we're going to be talking about residential Revit, in more along the lines of single-family custom residential Revit. So if you're doing 200 square foot additions, 2,000 square foot homes from ground up, there's a different approach to using Revit in that realm. And so based on your requests and what I've seen out there, I really wanted to spend some time talking about how I created a template for me specifically for this type of work, show you some of the behind the scenes, and then show you a real sample project and just sort of talk about it. You've seen a lot of, should we say, large scale template stuff on this site and on this channel. And that's all very valid, right? All the stuff that you've seen from all the great guests about different ways to be more efficient, different ways to tag and note and so on and so forth. A lot of that can be pulled into this, but it is a different realm when it's maybe just yourself or maybe only a couple people and you're doing pretty much a different project every time, hence custom. So I want to talk a little bit about my approach to these type of templates, my approach to these projects, and just show you behind the scenes. And of course, as usual, ask questions. I will be keeping an eye on the chat and we'll be going as long as my voice allows. So just looking down, we've got some folks, some returning visitors and guests. So thank you guys, Bruce and Alan and Yogi. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Before we do jump into the content of the afternoon, what I did want to do is spend a quick moment to thank our sponsor of this season of BIM After Dark Live, which is BIM Box. You may be able to see it behind all of my different liquids and stuff like this, but I've been using BIM Box laptop and desktop computers for over 4 years. It is what this live stream and all of the videos on my channel have been solely driven by, has been a BIM Box laptop or desktop computer. I do have a review set up and ready to post at any moment in time once I finally finish it. But these are phenomenal laptops and desktops specifically designed for us. What I mean by us is architects, engineers, contractors using Revit, Twinmotion, Enscape, and Navisworks, and all these tools that we typically use. These computers have been designed with us in mind. So if you're interested, head on over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com. Let them know that you heard about them here, and hopefully you can get yourself a nice new Revit computer. All right. Jorge, how's it going, man? Oh, awesome. We got some great folks here tonight. So thank you, BIMBox, for sponsoring this season. Those of you who have been following along for the last 4 or 5 episodes, if you haven't seen the other 100 episodes, then head on over to live.bimafterdark.com. But for the last 4 or 5 episodes, we've been focused solely on construction documentation and tips and tricks to improve the efficiency, to maybe up your level, whether it's for graphics or whether it's for more efficient, whether it's for rolling out certain standards and so on and so forth, or specific project types. So I thought it was only fitting to go from the macro and zoom into the micro. Because again, I do realize that doing a small, 400 square foot addition is a lot different than doing a 4 million square foot hospital, right? And I've been fortunate enough to have experience in both realms, and so I've been able to sort of see either or. And so what I want to do is jump into the template, and sort of run through my theory and approach to it all. But before I jump into that, I guess I'll run through the theory and approach to it all. And I see we've got a few people. Peter's here. Ryan, how's it going, guys? Great to see everyone. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on the chat. It's always a little harder for me to keep an eye on the chat when I'm the only person and there's no guest. So bear with me on that. But I will definitely keep an eye as we go along. So as far as custom single-family residential, and so what I mean when I say that is essentially, like I said before, anything from a deck addition or a 200. Actually, the sample project that I'm going to show you is actually this room I'm sitting in right now, which was a 400 square foot addition to my own house with a deck and so on and so forth, all the way up to maybe a 2,000 square foot barn dominium, which for those of you who have been following along on the channel may have seen that that's another project I'm working on right now. And so the approach I've taken to setting up a template for that and setting up something that works for me, it's a minimalist approach. But the idea is to create a template file that has everything I need to put together that project bare bones. Okay. Understanding that it's custom residential, right? So it's hard sometimes to be able to build a vast library of things that make sense for every project when, you're doing a mid-century modern kitchen renovation, a modern barn dominium, and then a deck addition, right? So those, like, think about that, those 3 projects there, right? So to me, it's more of an additive template, but it still has the essentials to get the job done, and then you fill in the gaps when it comes to the custom families or the custom residential, the custom aspects of that project. So basically, making all those more repetitive features part of the process, still having sheets and cartoon sets set up, having a good way to manage your browser, having the right wall types and families like that to really get things moving, but not spending a ton of time saying, I need all of these cabinets to be in there. I need all of these specific toilets to be in there, right? Because obviously that's going to change from project to project. But if you have one 3D toilet that looks great in plan, section, elevation, and 3D, then that's a great family to have in there. It doesn't need to be the Kohler 9000 until you choose the Kohler 9000. Excuse me, I'm going to hit my tea here. Jim Burden, thanks for logging in. It's his first time logging in. Awesome, man. Thanks for joining us. So that's the approach I took here. That's the approach I take to this type of work. It is get everything you need in there to, like right now, if I needed to do a 200 square foot addition, get a set of plans out with some 3D views, elevations, and so on and so forth, I've got everything I need right there. If I need to modify some of the families or bring in more custom stuff, then I can swap them out and pull them in. But as long as I have the bare bones to be able to pull something together, I'm going to show you exactly what that means when I run through this. Then to me, that's a success. I want it to look good. I'm a big persona. I'm big into making sure that drawings look great, making sure that your views look great, making sure that shading and colors and all that stuff sort of tying together, and then being flexible. So having a flexible template that you can modify certain things, but also be efficient at the beginning. I will completely add that until recently, I pretty much did text notes for most of my detailing. I do have a generic note, which I'll show you for demos, and another generic note for general, which was a note block with an annotation text. After all these episodes talking about keynotes and details and stuff like that, I will probably spend the time to go back and update that to be more efficient. But again, it depends on what you're doing and what makes sense for you. It has to look good. Yes, Yogi, it has to look good. That is 100% true. So let's just jump into it. I want to get into it as fast as possible before I completely lose my voice on you guys. So we're going to jump into the template. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be flipping between the template itself as well as a project that is completed in the template. So that's sort of the plan here, is to roll through it that way. So what you'll see here is I do have a start page. Another sort of disclosure here is that this template initially started sort of as a commercial template, but then morphed into my residential template, and then sort of came from another project. So there are some leftovers from the commercial side of it. Some of them I think are good and valid. So some of them are there. This is one of them, which is it's the start screen. And this actually, believe it or not, this is a sheet. And the reason this even existed is so that before Revit 22 or 21, when they had the preview shown when you went to File Open, so I'll go to File Open and show you. So if I click here, right, this shows Revit 2024 now. It didn't used to say that. And so because it didn't say that, the reason I had this opening sheet is if I went to my template here, you'll notice that in the thumbnail, you can actually see the version. So it said 2020. So unfortunately, that's a legacy because we don't need it anymore. But it was a nice way to know what version the file was in without having to go through the add-ins and all that other stuff we used to have in the past. Johan just asked if you can watch the video later. Yes, this is going to be recorded. It will be on the blog and on the YouTube channel afterwards. Okay. So kind of a cool little history lesson there with this homepage. Obviously, it also doesn't make much sense when you're a sole practitioner to have this little homepage. The first thing I want to talk about is the browser organization. So hopefully you guys can see that over here. One of the things a huge pet peeve of mine when it comes to Revit is an unorganized project browser. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about because everyone has seen them before. So I am I am a huge proponent of spending time and making sure that your browser is organized to something that makes sense for you and anyone else using your project. I do the same thing in Photoshop. I know a lot of people don't spend the time to make your Photoshop layers make sense. I do that as well. But Revit is a whole nother ball game, right? If you start, if you've ever opened another person's project and it doesn't have a standard or a way to do this, it is an absolute nightmare. So I've made sure that I had a browser organization that is not just flexible, but also easy to understand and easy to follow along with. So what you'll see right away, if I jump back into this, is I've got my floor plans, structural plans. Let me roll this up here. Ceiling plans, 3D views, elevations. So you'll notice that my browser is actually organized by view type. Okay, so I'll actually open it real quickly so you guys can see. So it's organized by family and type, and then it's organized by a parameter called drawing type. Okay, and so what's cool about this is it gives me the ability to group views within its own type to where I want them to be without trying to use other parameters. So for a while I was using phasing to try and get it to work, but as you know, if you're on a demo view, it's actually the new construction phase because demo's not a phase. I have a video on that if you don't believe me. So instead of doing that, it's pretty simple. I have a parameter called drawing type, and notice it says demolition, okay? And then this says existing, okay? And then this says new construction. So when I make a new floor plan, for example, obviously you can see I have the basics for the project that we need, right? I have a basement, first floor, second floor, roof of all the views set up, ready to go. I have some basic sheets, which we'll talk about in a second, even with layouts, good to go, that kind of stuff. But let's just say you needed to add a new one. So if I went in here and I said, new floor plan, I'll do another first floor, say okay. You'll notice what happens is it actually goes under question mark right away. Okay, so if I pull that open, it says first floor right here. Okay, but it is under the floor plan, which is the view type. If I select it and I flip it to the drawing type, I'll call it new construction and click apply. You'll notice now it jumps down to here into this folder, right? So basically I'm using that as a way to manually control and organize my views. So if you made a quick section or relevant section or something like that, you can then move them around. What's cool about this is you can go beyond just new construction elevation. Let's say you have elevations and there's specific areas. You can say, east elevation of rotunda or something like that. And you can start grouping views by specific custom parameters. Pretty cool, right? So again, that's just a parameter set up within the project itself. And then that's how I organize everything here. So it's real simple. It's family type. So if you make a new elevation, if you make a new building section, it's all going to jump into its own major category. And then from there, you can actually go in and you can organize them however you want. So I can change this to say existing something or other if I want to. It doesn't really matter. But the long story short of it, it's a text parameter that you can then custom organize however you want, which I think is very nice. You will notice that I do have this view naming structure, A-FP00 basement. This is actually this is a leftover from my commercial days and especially when I was doing schoolwork. And the reason I kept it is, even though it's kind of silly for residential, I still like having A-FP00 because basement, first floor, second floor, those aren't alphabetically set up in the browser the way that you would want them to be, right? So using view names that help them alphabetically do it is super helpful. And then you'll notice I also do it for the actual plan view. So X means existing, A means new, D means demo. So for example, D-EL-East elevation, right? I mean, these are, anyone can make these up however you want. This is just the way I prefer to do it. But what you'll notice is on a blank template, when I'm starting to look at them this way, it is a nice, easy way to understand where you are in the project. And again, that's the whole idea here is if you downloaded this template right now, you open it up, it should be pretty straightforward for you to be able to quickly draw a house, get it on your plans, and be good to go. And that's the whole idea. Okay, so that brings us down to the sheets and the title blocks. So if I scroll down, obviously, you guys know with Revit 2024, it tells you when things are on sheets, which is nice. So you'll be able to see real quickly that certain sheets are already on, or certain views are already on sheets. Not a ton of them. I didn't, I have a small cartoon set going on, but not a huge one, mainly because, as I mentioned, these are smaller projects. And what usually happens on a lot of these projects is that I may have one sheet that has everything on it. right? And so I went back and sort of looked at a lot of my projects, a lot of the different sizes, and I'm usually trying to fit as much as I can onto one sheet. And I know it's all digital now; it doesn't matter as much. But a lot of the time I am printing, and I like to print in color, so I'll try and pull it together. But I also don't like white space on sheets. So that's kind of why I didn't want to have like a first floor, second floor, roof, basement, all that stuff pre-set up on a sheet. It doesn't take long to set up for this type of work. But then I have the flexibility to be able to move it. So if I jump over to first the cover sheet. So the cover sheet, as you can see here, I did leave this in the template. Oops, sorry, you're not looking at it. I did leave this in the template. If you look here, there's a view here, which is a north elevation view. So that would show up when you build your building. I do have a whole bunch of code stuff. I debated leaving this in or not. There's some disclaimers on the website if you download it. Definitely, if you plan on using this, 100% read through it and change it to meet your jurisdiction and make sure it goes with what you have there. But for my purposes, right, these are very, very generic code stuff that I pretty much have on every single project there. So I wanted to keep that as it goes through. Okay. SGR just said line up your elevation markers. Well, the key there is that you're not seeing any of those elevation markers usually at the same time, so it doesn't really matter. And then you're not seeing them when they're not on sheets, so I don't really care that much. But yes, I could if I wanted to. So you'll notice if I go to my first floor sheet, there's a couple things that are on here, right? There's a first floor plan, there's a window schedule, and a door schedule, right? And this is the door schedule, simple, I call it. And that's it. Right. Again, the idea is if I start drawing, I've got something here. Again, the reason why I don't want to have a ton of these sheets laid out is just because of the fact that I usually end up, just like the projects themselves, the sheets end up being somewhat custom because they're so varied in size and whatnot. And then you'll also notice I do have this cool title block. I'm a super huge fan of this title block. Not a lot of people like it, but I'm a big fan of it. I do have 2 title blocks in here. This is 24 by 36. This was created by my buddy Derek, and I absolutely love it. It's got this sort of retro feel, especially because I do a lot of mid-century modern work. There is 2 title blocks here. If I flip to Let me do this one. If I flip to this one, there's one that's more standard where you have the information on the right-hand side, and then there's one that's more of this sort of contemporary looking thing that you see here. So 2 title blocks already there. But you'll notice the only views I have, or the only sheets I have set up are I have demo plans, floor plans, exterior elevations. I have a sections and details sheet with nothing on it yet. And then I have a reflected ceiling plan with the first and second floor on it, or basement first floor, depending on what it was, and then a structural drawing sheet with only 1 or 2 views and maybe some notes on it. And again, the idea is real simple in the sense of not having everything completely done, but also having it ready to go and you know, easy to pull together. As I mentioned before, these projects end up being so unique from each other, so it's kind of hard to standardize it from left to right all the time. But you'll see I do have some of those things that we've been talking about. The sheet actually is organized. The sheets are organized similar to the views, in that they don't have, or they do have a parameter that controls them. And this is also something that is I carried over from my commercial days, which is there's a sheet grouping number. And there's actually a shared parameter for it too, for linked files, which, you know, obviously I'm not doing very much of on this type of work. But there's a sheet grouping number, and you'll notice it says 00-start, right? So similar in 01 cover, 02 demo, 03 architecture, 04. And you can name these whatever you want, you know, whatever makes sense for you. But the idea is exactly the same as the views. It's to group things together. So you notice these are all 03 architecture. This is demo. And then I'm using the numbers in front of them to organize them in alphabetical order, because obviously if I put just architecture as the folder and then you know, demo as the next one, the demo would jump ahead of it and it's obnoxious and annoying. So that's just a real simple parameter called sheet grouping number. And then as you can see, I do have a sheet grouping shared. There's a sheet order. There's a bunch of like shared parameters in there that will help you organize your views from there on. I see Aaron's in here too. Yes, yes, Aaron. Sick people unite. My goodness. Okay, Tom asked about the families. Tom, I'm going to get right into the families for sure. Let's see. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything good. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about families and what families I do have loaded in a minute, Tom, for sure. Awesome. Okay. So we went through browser organization, we went through the sheets and title blocks and the sheet grouping parameter. Then graphics. As I mentioned before, I want this thing to look good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip over to the sample project here. And so this is actually, if you download the template, and I'll talk about where you can get it later on, this project comes with it because I think it's really important to see a project that has been completed in the template. You know, all of us who build templates, we know that as much as we want to standardize everything in the life of a project, things sort of go awry sometimes and stuff. So it's always really cool to see a working product from the original template sort of gone through there. So as I roll down here, I'll go to the sheets first just to show you guys what this looks like. So here's kind of what the template, the graphics of the template look like. As I mentioned before, I'll zoom into the floor plan. I am someone that I believe that good-looking drawings have a major play in how projects are built. I think the more legible they are, the better they look. Just overall, you're going to have a better product at the end of the day. So I do have some very specific graphic standards that I set up here. You'll notice I have shading on, I have colors on, I have all this stuff set up for this view. All of my tags and everything have this I'm not really sure what color we'd call it. I guess a dark purple or a magenta, deep magenta. And I like to print them that way because to me it's clear as day what's a dimension, what's not, and so on and so forth. I also usually print in color because of that, including the shading. I do have view templates set up here that flip between shading on and shading off. Understanding that sometimes you want, whether it's a submission, a specific type of print, and so on and so forth, you may want to flip the shading on or shading off. So there's a view template set up to how how that goes through. But just to give you a sense of what the graphics look like, here's a couple of views here. If I go down to the basement view, you can see some dimensions, some sections. Here's that door schedule, which I'll talk about a little bit. Again, simple and easy to use. These are some typical details. I may have actually left those in there, even though half these details don't really apply anymore. I should probably just get those out of there. Aren't we all doing that? Same thing with the elevations. You'll notice with the elevations, I always keep shading on. Again, if I need to flip it out, I will. I do have depth queuing on in most of these elevations, as well as shadows, and you can see all my text notes and so on and so forth. And then, of course, 3D views. I always have 3D views in all my projects because, why would we not? We're using Revit. Sections and details, same thing here. And you might have seen this. I have a couple videos on this project and so on and so forth. Same thing with sections and details. I want to make sure they look good as well as they're easy to understand. A lot of this stuff is 3D, which we'll talk about a little bit too when I go through the families. A lot of the stuff is not. So, for example, I'm not going to model the hurricane clips. I'm not going to model some of these clips up here, but I am going to model the headers, the king posts, and all that good stuff. I'm not going to model the installation either. So it's a mix between what's modeled and what's not. But hopefully this gives you a good idea. Notice not only do I have ambient shadows with my 30-50-20 rule or 70-50-20 rule, I also have that sort of magenta feel that helps you understand the difference between annotations and model elements. I'll just roll through a couple other sheets of this project, and then we'll dig into a little bit. Here's some structural stuff. So you can see here we have a reflected ceiling plan, basement reflected ceiling plan, which is exposed joist. That's why you're seeing that. Some details here. These are actual 3D details, in-place details. Let me just roll through some of this. And then structural drawings. As I mentioned before, I always spend the time to model the framing in this residential work, and then it makes it a lot easier to understand what we're doing, and as well as to explain it to other people. So all of that is built into there as well. So when it comes to actual view templates, I keep it pretty straightforward though. Again, because of the fact that, because I'm trying to keep it simple and I don't want to have 1,000 things going on. Sorry, I'm jumping through a bunch of projects here. Let me jump back to here. I pretty much only have a couple templates based on the view type. So it's really just, if I go to manage view templates, it's really just elevations, and then it's really the types. So I have a 3D, I have a view template for 3D, and basically there's 3D sexy and 3D not. So sexy is shadows and ambient, and the other one's not. Elevations sexy and elevations not. Floor plan sexy and floor plan's not. Right? I'm not doing linking. I'm not doing too many filters. Like there's not that much going on in this type of work that I don't really need all of that stuff. If I needed to, I would create it, sure. But really, it's just that it's more the ability to quickly flip all the floor plan views to non-shaded, flip them to shaded, and so on and so forth. Thad just asked if I print in color. Yes, I always print my sheets in color. obviously, depending on the project, that may not be cost prohibitive, but yes, I always put my sheets in color. If I'm not printing in color, that's why I have those other view templates. So I can quickly flip a project from, these sexy ambient views to a typical standard view, and then they print better in non-color printers, right? Because obviously in a black and white OSE, for example, the thing's gonna look absolutely awful. I see a bunch of questions in here. Hold on, let me just make sure I'm hitting them all. How's your finishing documents? Yep, I think I just showed you all that. Joe Buchek asked about ResCheck. I don't have ResCheck built into any of this stuff. Scoured asked about, depth queuing. Yeah. So when you use these shaded views, when you use depth queuing, when you use shadows, you're printing raster, right? So when you do that, you want to make sure that you're printing at a high enough DPI for PDFs that it looks good, right? And obviously the printer is going to make a difference if you go from there, but I'm typically using Bluebeam as my printer, and I'm cranking up the DPI to something that makes sense, a good balance between, quality versus file size. So yeah, when the second you do this, you're automatically printing raster, which isn't always the greatest thing. So, depending on what you're doing. So be wary of that. But that's also the reason why I have the ability to flip between the sexy views and the not so sexy views, let's say. So your structural models, yes, I do. In this type of work, I'm typically doing the structural model within the same project as the architectural model. I think as it gets to a certain scale, it makes sense to separate it, but I'm the one doing both the models. I'm not there's no structural engineer on this job, on most of these jobs. So I'm just doing it all within it. If I had to do mechanical, plumbing, or electrical in it, which you saw, there was some power, some switches, that kind of stuff, nothing crazy. I'm just doing it all in one model because it doesn't really make sense to separate it. It's just me, and I'm doing all that work myself. Reggie asked if there's any consideration for folks who are colorblind. Yeah, sorry, man. That sucks. Yeah, I mean, what do you want me to say, Reggie? I'm sorry. Let me see real quickly. Aaron asked a quick question here. Yeah. Yeah, Aaron did just mention something that's actually pretty important there. Aaron said we'd love to do colored dimensions and stuff if our clients, if we knew our clients wouldn't make us turn it all back. The one thing to consider when it comes to this fully colored modification. So you'll notice I'll go back to the view. My elevation tags. Let me jump back to the sample project. Right, my dimensions, the elevation tags, the sections, all of that stuff is this magenta purple color. When you do that, there's a lot of modifications you're making to the families to make that happen. You have to, there's a lot of different type changes and stuff that you have to do. So flipping it back can be a lot of work. So that is something definitely to think about. That it's not as simple as changing one or two object styles. There's quite a bit of types and stuff you have to dig into to get to that point where you have everything one color. Awesome. Okay, so that was graphics and view templates. So before we jump into some of the schedule stuff, some of the note blocks, and some of the loaded families and whatnot, I did want to spend a minute to talk about the BIM After Dark community. So where you can get this template is exclusively as a member of the community. And so this whole season, I've been highlighting members of the community to tell you about it. And so what a better episode now than to highlight that and then talk about how you can actually get this yourself. So I think we have a quick little review from Chris Broda, who's a member of the community for almost 3 years. And then we'll come back and we'll jump into what families I have loaded. We'll draw some stuff. We'll show you how the thing starts if you're starting a project from scratch.
Hi, I'm Chris Broda, and I'm a member of the BIM After Dark community.
Oh, that's it. That's all we need. That's more than enough to sniff out.
So I knew early on that CAD was going to be the way to go.
Yep.
then I did Revit, and I was, alone at sea in Revit world, as a single practitioner, and I became a big fan of your videos and it's so changed the way I even look at everything about how to practice. It made me want to join your community for sure.
Yep.
I thought, this guy's great, I got to join.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting to learn a lot about Revit, sort of patch the holes of where I was.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, I feel like I've learned about my career and I've learned about what it means to be an architect. And I have to say kudos to you and the community, because it has made me a better architect. I have improved my practice. I've improved everything. And it's so funny because I'm ready to retire. So for the last couple of years, I didn't really want to be an architect anymore. But also just everything with your community has given me that spark back.
All right. Thanks, Chris. That also gave me a chance to blow my nose and try and recover here. So, and also read some of your questions. As it saw on the ad reel there, the template is part of the community membership. So there's some huge benefits to that. First, obviously, you get to be part of the community and you get access to the template. Second is there is a social feed as part of that, and that's part of the reason why I've spent the time doing this and putting it within the community, is so that we have that ability to work back and forth and interact with each other. And so what that looks like on the inside, just so you guys can see. If I go in here to the bad residential template, sorry, let me know if you guys can't see. I'm having some feedback stuff. So let me know in the chat if you guys are seeing me it live. I'm getting some weird buffering on my end, but if you are, hopefully you are. And you can see this is what the template page looks like in the community itself. But there's a key aspect here, which is the feed. So if I click the feed, what you'll notice is there's a live feed here where you can ask questions, interact, and it's going to be constantly updated as things change. Okay. So as much as it is here, you'll notice it says last update was 4/19/2023. Revit version was 2020. And it looks like it looks good. Sorry, that must have been on my end. I was seeing the preview and it was buffering. So sorry about that little delay there, guys. But this is part of the reason why all my courses and everything else I put onto this community aspect is not only can I keep them up to date if I need to, but I also have the ability to interact with you guys within it here, which is what's so awesome there. So if you are interested, head on over to community.bimafterdark.com and you guys can check it out there. So as that was running, there was a couple questions I noticed there. The first one was by LJ, who said, I know you dislike work sets, but do you separate structural and architectural into work sets? That's a great question. First, I don't dislike work sets. I dislike how work sets are being used. Work sets are essential to let us work on a project with multi-users. I just don't think they need to be used for visibility. But this is a great example as to why I wouldn't use work sets, because guess what? I'm the only one working on most of these projects. In fact, I'm the only one working on all these projects. There's absolutely zero reason for me to make a central file. So there's zero reasons for me to make a work set. So no, I don't use any work sets for these projects. I do, however, use filters if need be. So for example, and I actually, hopefully I do have it in this project. Maybe I just did it by category. For structural elements, for example, that kind of stuff, most of it you can filter out by categories, right? If you wanted to, then I would use notice in here I have interesting filters when I go in here. I have ones by date. I was tracking install. And then I have things called battens, boards, concrete takeoff, not pressure treated. So a great example there is, I have different types of, let me go to the framing plan here. Building framing, first floor. Oops, not 3D, sorry. Structural plans, here we go. Okay. All right, so here's a great example here, right? So I have outside here, obviously these are structural, these are deck beams, right? So, oops, I gotta turn off stupid select pin thing. So under here, right, I have pressure treated lumber, which is a very specific type, and then I have non-pressure treated lumber. So if I wanted to, I can quickly turn on a filter to modify those tactics. And let me go to a 3D view so you guys can see even what some of those look like. New only. Yeah, so there you go. So just the ability to filter certain things. So no, I'm not using work sets, but I'm using filters, which again, that's kind of been my argument the whole time, is there's all the stuff you can do with a work set, you can do with a filter. You can just use a parameter or a type or all the other information that exists within your model. There's no reason to have work sets, especially on a project when you don't actually physically have work sets, right? So I would never, never centralize a file if I'm the only one working on it. So therefore I don't need work sets, nor do I ever need work sets, right? So therefore, no, I'm not using work sets for visibility. And I think that was the only question that I really missed here. There was some more comments about the colorblind. Yes, I didn't mean to be insensitive about that. The problem with, and I know a lot of people that are colorblind, the problem with trying to figure that out is it's different types of color blindness. And so it'd actually be really hard to figure that out than obviously just staying black and white. So yes, awesome. All right, so let's jump into the schedules, and then some of the annotation stuff, as well as some of the system families and whatnot that are built within this project here. All right, so let me go here. So I'll jump into the actuals, the sample file first, and what I'll do is we'll draw some stuff now, just so that we have it in here. And then this will actually allow us to talk a little bit about the families too, even though I'm not going to go too crazy about it. But you'll notice if I go to walls, there's not a whole lot of wall types, right? This is single family residential architecture, right? For the most part, it's stick framed. And for the most part, there's not a ton of wall types that are needed. So it really has, again, the basics that you actually need. It has, 10 and 12 inch concrete foundations, because I don't really ever do anything much different. If I need to make an 8 inch, it takes me 30 seconds. If I want to build it in there, sure, you can, if that's what you're doing. There's an interior 4.5 inch partition with I kept a couple rated partitions in there just because. There's drywall only, and then there's a couple exterior ones with siding and so on and so forth. Again, the ability just to jump in and only do what you need to do. So I'm just going to quickly, we're going to build a small little house right here. Okay, and then I'll jump in. Roof's the same thing. You'll see all I have here is an asphalt shingle only, because if I'm doing like a shingle replacement, a shed roof, which is more like a corrugated roof, and then there's a couple ones that have the structure built in. So if I'm doing, if I'm modeling the structure, then obviously I'm going to go with thin. But usually on these projects, I'll start with the structure, the sheathing, and the roof all there. And then over time, when I build the framing, I'll switch to another roof that just has the sheathing and the rafters aren't built into it anymore. For the sake of today, we'll just quickly do one that has it all built in. Let me flip on over here. Right, and I'll just give this we'll give this a little overhang. We'll do 1 foot. Make this a gable roof. This will be the second floor. Now if I go to 3D, there we go. We got this guy, and there we go. Right, we have our little house here. You'll notice the view already has the 70-50-20 rule applied. It's got all the shading view, all that good stuff in there. But I really wanted to show you is if I go to my floor plan, for example. Right, you'll notice this is already set up here. This is good to go. If I go in and activate here and I add a couple doors. So again, doors, right now what's in there is basically your out-of-the-box typical residential door families. Some custom here and there, but for the most part, they're actually the out-of-the-box, bare bones, to get the job done. This is probably, 90% of the stuff that I do here, is a double sliding door, overhead, full glass wood, the interior, 2-panel, interior sliding, that kind of stuff, double glass. So it's basically the essentials. If I need other stuff, that's when I pull it in. But you're going to get 90% of your small scale residential work done with this kind of stuff. So I'll just do a quick couple doors here. I just want to show you sort of what the schedule look like here. So I'm going to add another exterior door. Let's do this one on the end here. And then maybe we'll do a couple interior walls. And then we'll throw a couple windows on it. Okay, so here's my interior walls. We'll do a couple interior doors. Single flush interior. Ta-da. Okay, beautiful. Yes. All right, and then we'll go to windows. Same thing here with windows, right? casement, double hung, fixed, and there's a double one, give or take. And again, that's it, right? Because every project is unique. So this will get you everything you need to get out of the box, good to go. And then you can always build in your Anderson, Marvin, whatever you're doing for that specific project. Then you can actually load them in and put them in your projects. It makes no sense to me to load an Anderson window in my project because every project uses a different window type. So if I go in here, you can see here's our beautiful house. Oh, don't know why this thing is a 4-inch offset. That's weird. Stupid Revit. Always keeping the settings. Okay. So you'll notice that these door schedules are actually they're populating, right? So within this, when it comes to door schedules, I've spent a lot of time perfecting massive commercial / institutional door schedules, and I actually kept some of them in here mainly because I can't take it upon myself to delete them. So you'll notice there's a door schedule called Simple, and there's a door schedule, which is based on a style schedule. So if I go to the door schedule, you'll notice this thing is a monster, right? This one is there. It's got everything you can think of, door material, frame type, blah, blah, blah. You go down the list here, right? Mainly because if for some reason I needed that for this, I kept it in there. But I'm mostly using the Simple one, which looks like this. And this is very simple. Manufacturer, model, and comments. That's it. And it makes it so easy to fill out. So if I wanted to go through here, and then finally they decide this is Anderson, or let's say, oops, and this is a type parameter, which I'm fine with for the sake of this project, right? Because then it changes all the types of that one. If you need a new type, you will. Marvin Elevate, AE600. That's fine. And then maybe this one is a Marvin Elevate. I don't know, we'll call it E200, whatever. And then in here you can say, storage, lock set, or whatever you need, right? These are just comments, right? And so it just makes it so easy to quickly fill this stuff out. So then if I go back to my sheet here, there it is there. There's your door schedule, ready to go. I have to change the title on that. Same thing with the windows, manufacturer, model, and comments. And again, it's mainly because 90% of the projects, that's all you need. You need a size, you need a manufacturer, a model, obviously the mark, and then some comments. And then in the comments is where you can do all the fun stuff, right? When you move into the multifamily, multi-user, the bigger work, then obviously you're going to go to the bigger schedule because you need more information. But this is out of the box, good to go. You're ready to line up a schedule, and then it's in there, right? So it makes it super simple and super easy to use. If you needed to and you wanted to use, the higher end stuff, I kept it in there because of that. This door schedule, the reason you're not seeing anything is it actually uses that purgatory parameter, which is the yes/no. For it appears in schedule, so you can see model properties to show in schedule. So you just need to check that box, and then it turns it on. And then I go to the door schedule. You can see all my stuff will be there. And then from there, I can either manually fill this out or I can use door styles, right? Which we're not going to get into that during this one, but that's the idea with the schedules. Both the window and the door schedule is simple, right? Simple and get the job done, and only the information that you absolutely need, right? And so it's there. It's on the sheet. It's good to go. It's easy to fill out. Christopher said, I was told that you should not use work sets or visibility. Yes, that is 100% true. And then Yogi mentioned, this is an additive template. He mentioned additive versus subtractive template. Yeah, this is what I would call an additive template. I don't want to have 1,000 projects open and pulling stuff in, but because it's custom residential work, obviously if you're someone that's doing the exact same project all year long, you're doing production housing or something like that, you're in a different realm, right? That's something where it makes sense to build a template that makes everything. But like I said, if I'm doing a 200 square foot addition, a kitchen renovation, a barn dominium, and then, I don't know, a small restaurant or something, right? If I'm doing all of those in the same year, then there's no benefit to me having all this stuff pre-baked, because every one of those is going to require everything different. So then I'm sort of being additive in that sense. So on that note, if we jump in, I showed you a little bit about what system families are built into there, right? So if I go to my walls, again, there's the basic, the ones, again, that I use the most, right? There's a vertical siding only. There's a stone. There's two different stone ones. There's a nice stone pattern there. There's drywall only. Then there's a 5.5. So there's, a 2x6 interior wall, a 2x3, a 2x4 interior wall. There's a wood stud infill, which is for different things. There's just a brick one. And then I do have a couple different curtain walls, or curtain systems, I guess you'd call them, curtain walls in here. So one is a board and batten. So you'll notice there's a nice board and batten. If you guys haven't seen the video where I showed how to make that, it's built into this template here. There's a nice 3D board and batten. Let's flip this around so you guys can see it a little better. So there's the board and batten here. There's also a just a regular curtain wall one. There's a slat wood wall. Which again could come up depending on the project that you need. And then there's, I think, just a window wall. So again, this window wall is very simple in the sense of if I want to do something. A lot of times, even these ended up being window actual individual windows. But if I want to quickly throw something that's going to be curtain wall, I usually end up doing it this way, so that it's more custom and easier to set up. LJ just asked perfectly on timing. So yes, I have both as far as the windows are concerned. He asked if I had a fixed window or if I'm using mine. So what I end up doing is I usually end up starting the conceptual phase, especially in areas where I might have, if I go back to my project here. Nope, not that one. So this is a great example here. Oh God, let me get out of this view. Yuck. Let's get out of this view. Okay. So this is a great example here where this project initially started out, this whole thing I built as a curtain system, right? This whole thing here. And then obviously over time, it ends up being window units instead, right? And that's what a lot of these residential work becomes, right? You're not building a ton of stick-built curtain systems on residential projects. But I did start with the curtain wall, and then I eventually morphed it into the actual windows. And then even here, it ended up being actually, this was one unit was actually like this. The other unit, it was a double unit there, but you get the idea. So for the most part, that's kind of how it is. It usually starts as a curtain system, and then usually I'll try to build it out the way that we want, with enough room for the 2x6s in between and double 2x6s and all that stuff. I have done it in the past where maybe I'll do like a thicker mullion instead of building a bunch of windows, and knowing that this is going to be two 2x6s, that's going to be one 2x6, and so on and so forth. But usually I'll try to flip it out to model it how we're going to build it. Right, your documents, everything's always going to be a little bit better if you model it the way that you plan on building it, so to speak. Let's see here. As in the case, I want to say, David asked, how long do you think this would take to change to metric? Well, I mean, if I go to type UN in the project, I can just go here and I can flip everything to millimeters and meters for you if you want. I'm not going to rename all the families. That's a whole nother ball game. Feel free to rename them. But yes, this is an imperial template, and I do not have a metric version of the template. Revit switches between metric and imperial without problems. The only difference is, my windows say 36-inch wide. You might not want them to say 36-inch wide for the family types, but in theory, you can actually flip in Revit between metric and not pretty quickly. Awesome. Sweet. Okay, so as far as like the additive concerns, let me jump back into this. So we talked a little about system families. If I go in here, this is a great example of the component families. So I actually do have these are the out of the box cabinet families. Okay, so let me jump over to a 3D kitchen view here. Actually, I'll just make a new one here. Grab this guy. Go BX. Of course, why would the section box be on? Let's go to PyRevit and say section box. Oh, annotation. There we go. Okay, section boxes were off, of course. So part of the reason why. Really, I just like quadruple hid this thing. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. All right. So to me, casework is a great example where, just to get documents done, especially if it's not in the scope of it. Like this kitchen was not in the scope of the work, right? But I needed it there for reference and context of what's going on. So I do have out of the box, because they're light, they're easy, they're simple to use. Out of the box families in here as far as the casework is concerned. So again, if you need to be able to quickly build a kitchen, a bathroom, and so on and so forth, you can. Well, if the second this comes in scope and I want this to be more custom, that's what I'm pulling from a family library. You guys have seen I did a whole kitchen renovation series. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I'll put a link below. You've seen what I use for those, and that's typically the revitfamily.biz, which is Brenton, who's a friend of the show, his libraries. And so I actually prefer jumping in this way, just because there's so many, and just pulling families out of this. It's not, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but he has different styles. So if I'm doing a modern, kitchen, then I jump open to the modern project family, and I'll load them in, and I'll copy them in, and so on and so forth, flip them out and whatnot. But being able to put in like this toilet, this tub, these are out of the box 3D stuff, right? Maybe this is pedestal stink isn't, but so the whole idea here is you don't need all this fancy stuff, right? If the second this becomes in scope, right? So right now, look at this is what this looks like in 3D, because this bathroom has nothing to do with it except for the plan that's there. But if I needed to redo this, guess what? Then I'd start putting in some custom millwork, right? I'd put in some more some more actual custom built stuff that has to do with the project itself. But for the sake of this project, I just needed to be able to get it done, right? Or I needed to be able to see it, so to speak. So that's the idea there is let me get enough loaded in here. So there's a toilet, there's a sink, there's a couple different sinks, there's a bathtub, right? There's all the essentials to build a house, essentially, right? There's all the essentials to build a house, essentially. And then the second you need to customize it, that's when you customize it, right? It's I can't, you think about sinks, for Christ's sake, right? You there's how many different sinks and vanities and toilets and stuff are there. So you get this there so you can build it, and then you can customize it from there. Structural families, same thing, right? I have, it's all out of the box structural families. The only difference is I've modified them to have, which you guys, if you check out the channel, I have some videos on this. These are all the 3D structural families here. You'll notice the dimensional lumber, good to go. I did a type. I didn't necessarily have to do type, but I wanted to for the sake of what I was doing. I did a pressure treated type and a non-pressure treated type. I could have used another parameter for that, but so it has your basics in there, right? I have 2x4 up to 2x12. There's a heavy timber one. There's actually an LVL in the updated. I have to update that there. There's a couple hollow tube steel. Everything that you would typically need for it. The X's are part of the family. That's part of the reason why I wanted to keep them in there. But basically everything is in here so that if I wanted to quickly model the structure, which is what I'll do right here, let me go to building framing. I've got everything I need to build the structure exactly as you see it here, right? Out of the box, good to go. And if I need custom, if I need a 14-inch LVL, if I need a very specific timber frame, then I'm going to load it in, right? I mean, it doesn't need to exist in there. Same thing with the foundations, right? As I mentioned before, I only have 10 and 12 inch, I think, because that's basically all I ever end up doing. So that's kind of what's built into it. So in that sense, it's an additive template, but it also has everything you need to do it, right? So right now, if you open it, you can pretty much do any project. If you wanted to customize it, change the look of things, yeah, you have to modify it. But from right now, from start to finish, you can do any of these projects and have a set of documents and a usable model at the end of the day. Any cool global parameters? Nope. Not a single global parameter. Joe Buchek just mentioned that Marvin does have some good families. They do have some good families. I agree. I have used them in the past. And yeah, I'm just checking through all the chat stuff there. Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. If you have any further questions, guys, make sure you ask them in there. Sorry, guys. I'm losing it. All right. We're gonna have to wrap it up soon before my voice disappears. The last thing I wanted to show you here was, if I go down to my elevations, what you'll notice is that having the shadows, having the visibility parameters set in there, you do have to modify it sometimes. So if you're using depth queuing, for example, depth queuing is a really hard thing to have templatized, mainly because it's based on levels of where the building exists, and every building is a different shape or size. So that's something to keep in mind. For my shading, for example, you'll notice this one doesn't show shadows, right? But if I threw a floor in there, oh, I'm losing it, guys. I'm losing it. If I threw a floor in there, you'll notice the shadows pick up. Oop, that was a nice gravel floor. Let's change that, huh? Sure, concrete. The shadows pick up, and that's because my shadow settings for most of these actually have no ground plane for the shadows, and there's a specific reason for that. It's for when I'm doing when I have levels below, the shadows help a lot to be able to sort of see, to be able to understand the level, the variation of levels in a project. So if I go here and let me get rid of the scope box on this one. Sorry, brain fart. Where's the scope box? Where are you? There it is. Okay. All right. So, I mean, actually, you could probably see it there, but you'll notice that. See how nice and long this shadow is, and this shadow helps there. And then when I go over here, this shadow's going all the way down to the floor. So none of my floor plan views have a ground plane at shadow, so that when you have openings and whatnot, it actually gives you that visual of the openings going down. So just some things to keep in mind as you're going through it. All right. Ahmed asks if I'm hiring. I'm not hiring. Sorry, man. Do I show any wind bracing on your elevations? Joe, it depends on the project and if it's required. I don't show any of that stuff unless it's required, man. But yeah, I mean, there's a note on the wall sections about wind bracing and strapping and all that good stuff. And it's very project by project basis. All right. I just want to make sure I hit all of the questions before. Okay. RB just asked if we'll be able to download the template. Yeah. So, if there's no more questions, then I'll double check here. Hopefully that was a good overview of everything. There's a lot of stuff there, and there's even more that I could probably show. And if you're interested in some of it, definitely reach out. If you want to download the template and the sample file and play along and reach out to me and have comments and use it and so on and so forth, then again, it's exclusive to any member of the BIM After Dark community. So just head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. You can join, become a member, hang out with a bunch of us cool people on the community side of things, get courses and interactions and office hours. We actually have an office hour next week. And you can also download the template. Last but not least, Robert asked, do I have sheets just for presentations? No, not really, to be honest. So for presentations, that's usually very custom in the sense of like, depends on what I'm doing. I might be exporting images, putting them together on Photoshop, or a lot of times I'm just presenting with like Twinmotion on a live model or something. So no, not any specific views or sheets for presentations. If you watch along with my Modern Barn series as well as the kitchen series, you can kind of see how I handle some of that early stuff and what I might do on the sheet side. All of those projects are using this template, so that's another two examples of how you can see these templates in action. Thanks, Joe. Thank you guys for joining. Scoured says part 2. I'd love to do part 2. Let me know what stuff you want to dig into more. Yeah, and again, head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. Thank you to BIMBox for sponsoring this episode. Head on over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com. I'm going to head out before I completely lose my voice. For those of you who do celebrate, happy Thanksgiving this week. And we'll be back next week with a new episode on Thursday with a guest that time. And hopefully my voice will be at 100% and we can dig in a little more. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much, guys. This has been great. With that, I want to bid you all adieu. The replay will be here on the channel as well as on the blog at bimafterdark.com. And with that, have an awesome night, and I'll talk to you guys soon.